Good
Listening
to
to you
see,
speak,
right?
it's like we on the West Coast here, we talk a lot about having a sense of place. And you're right, it's not always about money. It's just about maybe it's just about knowing who you are and feeling like you belong, right, in a community. And as I was reading through some of your more recent work on plurilingualism, I just thought, yeah, like the competency as I was reading, I was like, it sounds like it's about really helping learners tap into these different resources they have, both like with the languages they speak and the knowledge they have about different cultures, and maybe helping them find ways in which they can leverage that knowledge in different situations, right? To show that they belong or to boost their confidence, so to speak. So I just think it's wonderful. And I liked how you tried
And
to capture that in a measurement, in a tool. I do have a question though, because I love that you just brought up identity. And I apologize as if this has already been discussed, but I think it's still consistent with the flow of conversation here. We always like to talk about the practical nature of some of these instruments and ideas. And one that I really liked, one practical activity that I saw in your research that ties into this idea of identity and helping students become aware of all these resources they have, and teachers as well, is this idea of language portraits. And I don't know if you're still familiar with that, but could you just unpack that a little bit for for our listeners? Because I think it's just such a beautiful exercise, and that I think a lot of teachers would benefit from having in their classrooms. Yeah.
yeah, so language portraits, they originally emerged as, let's say, a piece of paper with a silhouette of a body, like a little doll like this. And it was given to the students, and they were asked to locate the languages that they have in their repertoire. We call this a repertoire, right? Languages or cultures on this body, and then try to get them to think about what these languages represent and why they were located in these parts of the body. So I can give you an example of so many portraits that I have seen over time, but a lot of people like to draw a heart on their bodies, and they put their first language there, or a language that they haven't spoken, or a heritage language, or a language that represents their community, their ethnic community, even if they don't speak, because there is this emotional connection. And nowadays, I don't like to use the silhouette anymore. I like to just tell students, here's a piece of paper, it's blank. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to draw yourself however you want. It could be a piece of art or a different type of representation. Doesn't have to be your body. And I would like you to include all of the languages that you have in your repertoire, the cultures too, but I give them some more prompts. I provide them with, oh, there you go. I provide them with prompts. For example, think about where you come from. Think about whether the country where you come from has been colonized or not, or not. What are the languages that you studied at school? Why is it that you're studying English now? What are the motivations behind it? Uh, what type of engagement with language do you have online when you're playing games with other people online? So that there are several prompts that really get them to think about their entire repertoire. And still, it's very difficult to capture 100% of your repertoire because it's always evolving, right? And sometimes you remember things, sometimes you don't. For example, if my mom had to draw herself right now, I'm pretty sure that she would include Korean there, even though she doesn't speak Korean. She has never been to Korea, but she loves Korean drama. She watches that on Netflix all the time. So of course, Korean would be part of it. Japanese would be part of it because she loves sushi and she has great respect for Japanese culture. So all of these little, we may think they are little, right? An appreciation of a culture here. I like this kind of sport that is related to that language, or engage online with people playing games in one particular language. All of these little interactions, they make up your linguistic and cultural repertoire. And it's a great way to have that represented in a drawing. And this drawing is very particular and very private to that particular person. Everybody has one unique portrait that represents your identity. And you were talking about sense of belonging. When we talk about sense of belonging, it doesn't necessarily, you don't necessarily have to feel a sense of belonging where you are physically, right? So we were talking about international students, for example, or immigrants going to another country. Does not necessarily have to be in my neighborhood. It doesn't have to be in the city where I am now. It could be that you will never really be accepted by the people in that neighborhood. And that's okay, but you are
Mm,
accepted
mhm.
elsewhere. So, where is it that you are accepted? And take that as part of you building strength and strengthening your identity too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
During COVID, right? During COVID, we weren't even going out. So, who cares about my neighbor if they don't like me? There are so many other people who do. Identity can be across space, across
Yeah.
time, across communities, different types, online, offline.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it's important for us to think about that too and tell students and other people who are struggling with being accepted.
Oh, absolutely. And I certainly didn't want to limit it to geography, but I think that it's great that we make that. Yeah, I think
Oh,
we
for
need to make
sure.
that
Yeah.
distinction for the audience as well, because we can some, as you suggest, we can sometimes have these very kind of narrow definitions of community, right? And but no, we, as you point out, we live in many communities in all sorts of spaces, both virtual and physical, right? But yeah, no, it's awesome. It's so additive too, right? Because if you can take all these different understandings and resources and use them to your advantage in to join these communities or to exercise your own agency to leave your mark. I think that ties into this other idea. Was it Matsutoshi Sato we had on the podcast who talked about L2 self? And I know that he's played with that concept and he's not wedded to it in many ways, but this idea of thinking about who you want to be in the language and finding your own direction. And I think this PPC really speaks to that when I, as I interpret it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And thinking about your other self in the language that you are learning is something that can be very helpful. An imagined identity, right? What is it? What is the identity that you imagine that you are going to be? I do that a lot with French now because I'm learning French. So I go, what do I want to sound
Sure.
like
Yeah.
or be like? I still want to be myself, but then you also have to get used to yourself, hearing yourself in that
Yes. Yeah.
language, right?
I'm sure I sound like the
Yes.
shogun
Which
when I
that's
speak Japanese. Yeah. 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 But I'm aiming high, Angelica, aiming high with my Japanese. Yeah. Yeah. Shogun or bust. Yeah.